Welcome to the next episode of TILLY, the interactive lupus link for you. TILLY is a weekly episodic series brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of New England. I'm your host, Marissa Zeppieri-Caruana. A lot of you know me as Lupus Chick. I'm really excited today to introduce you to a friend of mine, an amazing lupus advocate, Kazy Tauginas. Hopefully that I said that correctly. He is an actor, writer, producer, and a lupus advocate. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Kazy.
Thank you for having me, Marissa. And you did good on my name. You made me proud.
Yay. So I'm sure a lot of our viewers here probably already follow you, but if they don't, definitely check him out on Instagram and Facebook. We're going to give those links away later and tell you what they are. But Kazy, I would love to talk to you about a couple of different lupus related topics today and a little bit about you and your background. And, but I just wanted to start off. You could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm primarily an actor. People have probably seen me in a few things that they've watched, like Equalizer 2 or Dolomite Is My Name or Equalizer, the TV show. Equalizer's been good to me, clearly. But I've tried to use my little acting platform as a way to push lupus awareness, because my mother has lupus and she has been suffering from lupus for my entire life. Through this journey that I've gone on regarding advocacy, she's kind of taken time and realized within her own life that she thinks her first flare was when she was 16 years old. So my mother's been dealing with this for a long time, and I've seen her dealing with it and fighting it and going in for chemo and the constant doctor's visits and the, well, your mom doesn't look sick comments and et cetera, et cetera. And a few years ago, I decided to really get proactive and do something about it. And using my creative skill set, I wrote and acted and produced Standing 8, which is a film about a boxer who is diagnosed with lupus and then forced to retire. And it's really about how he psychologically deals with the fact that he's no longer allowed to do the thing that he loves. So that's it in a nutshell, I think.
Okay, well, thank you. I love Standing 8. I definitely want to share more about that later. We'll get into the details about that and let people know where they can actually go and watch that as well. But I wanted to start off with your mom, who I met. She's an amazing woman. And I wanted to ask you, just growing up, we have a lot of people, what they may not necessarily have lupus that watch, but they may have a parent or a spouse or just a loved one that they're in the home with that has lupus or another autoimmune disease. So I wanted to ask you, what was it like growing up with your mom being sick, maybe as a teenager or younger, and then how it was as you got older? Because I remember you and I had chatted a little bit about this and how you began to see things differently as you got older and the struggle that she was really going through that maybe you don't recognize when you're so young.
Yeah. My mother, I guess, before I was born, decided with my father that they were not going to let her lupus get in the way of me having a normal childhood. So my mother, it's not that she covered up that she had lupus, but she just decided that she wasn't going to let it affect her life and her raising of her son. That she still took care of herself and did all the things that she was supposed to do, and she went to the doctor, but there were never any alarm bells for me growing up, especially at a young age, that really my mom was very sick. It all felt very normal. I remember her having braces for her wrists because she was having those arthritic type symptoms when I was very young. And then she would have a neck brace, and then there would be nap time in the afternoon, but all of it just seemed very normal. She never really drew a lot of attention to it. She never really asked for sympathy or anything like that. She just continued on living her life. And also I saw her slowly having to dial back her career. She went from, teaching. She's a mathematician. She was teaching a few times a week as my early memory I can and recall. But by the time I was like 8 or 9 years old, she had to stop teaching altogether. But again, it was never turned into a thing. It was never like a big deal. I even remember her being in the hospital when I was 8. And they put her on lupus. What that time was like a lupus, like a new treatment, which was chemotherapy. Like that was a new way that they were approaching lupus. She was one of the first patients to actually receive chemotherapy as a treatment. And again, she was in the hospital, but my parents didn't really make a big deal out of it. And I in turn didn't really realize how sick my mother actually was. And in hindsight, I can think about like my earliest childhood memory is actually when I was 2 years old, asking my father, looking up at him. He's like 6'4", looking up at him and asking him, "Where's mom?" And at that time, she was in the hospital, literally fighting for her life. When I was 2, the doctors told her she wasn't going to make it. But being the warrior that she is, she battled it out, and she's still around, right? So there's your prognosis of 10 years, right? She threw that right into the wastebasket. So I really, growing up, didn't realize how sick she was. Even when she was in pain, she wouldn't broadcast it. So I think when I was a senior in high school, it still didn't really hit me. My mom was doing outpatient chemo when I was a senior in high school, and still it didn't hit me. And I had friends, years later reach back and be like, "Kazy, we never knew that your mom was really sick." And I was like, "Yeah, well, she didn't really want anyone to know, and she just wanted to live as normally as possible, and she didn't want me to look at her any differently than anybody else's mom." And for me, the turning point really when I started to get a much better grasp was when I was already in college. And despite all these hospital visits, my parents just never made it seem like it was anything out of it being normal, right? It was just our normal Tauginas family life. And when I was in college, I decided to do a report on lupus because at this time I'm like cocky. I'm like 20 years old. I think I know everything about lupus. I was like, oh, that's going to be an easy A. And I did a report and I started reading about the science and, biologically what was happening with my mom. And like it was starting, like light switches went off, right? Like I'm like, as I'm reading, I'm like, oh my God, this happens to my mom. This is why my mom does this. And this is why my mom does that. And that was a big, that was one of those quote unquote light bulb moments where you're like, oh, wow, this is actually what my mom has been dealing with. And this is awful. Like this is not easy. And I think it really took another turning point when I decided to make Standing 8, because again, my mother's journey was very personal. She didn't do like the support group thing. It was just her and my dad, and my dad's her primary caretaker, and it was them dealing with it. We didn't have any help from family. It just like a lot of family just don't understand. I think your listeners probably have issues like that where people in their own households don't understand. They're like, well, what's wrong with you? You don't look sick. You're tired, but why are you tired? Stop drinking orange juice, drink grapefruit juice instead. That'll fix it. Like this kind of, nonchalant, oh, you're good, whatever, take some vitamin C and it'll pass type of a thing. But when I made Standing 8, I started to see other people's journeys through social media and what they were contending with. And it really, really made me feel like I was at that time making the movie for my mom. It was kind of like a thank you to my mother for always supporting my dreams and supporting me. And I wanted to give back to her, but I realized that like she wasn't the only one that was experiencing these like symptoms and all these difficulties and these, having to walk away from careers and et cetera, et cetera. So that like my advocacy really began with Standing 8 and just continued to grow because I realized that people with lupus really needed a voice in the entertainment industry and needed advocacy within the entertainment industry.
Absolutely. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about Standing 8, which I love. That there's a couple of things that if viewers are not familiar with you, that I want to share with them. one, you have the boxer background yourself, so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that. But I also like the fact that a lot of times lupus is labeled only as a woman's disease, so it can make the men that are diagnosed with lupus really feel like the outcast, or that they don't have this voice. We already know women tend to speak up more, use more words every day, are a little bit more vocal. So that's just a fact. But then you have these misconceptions that sort of pushes men out a little bit more. And I love that you made the main character a male. So can you tell us a little bit about, like, just this idea comes to you, you start writing, what is that whole process like? And then actually having to play the character that is somewhat, what you've seen your mom go through now your entire life. Can you just take us through some of that?
Sure, sure. So the idea at the time when I wrote the first draft, it was end of 2015. And it was born out of, it was like a twofold kind of thing. I did box when I was younger. I fought in like the Pennsylvania Golden Gloves. I had like 13 amateur fights. I really learned a lot from boxing. Learn a lot of lessons about yourself, especially when you lose. It was I had been a figure skater before I boxed, so I've been across the athletic spectrum regarding what would be considered masculine or whatever, or artsy versus brutal. And I I loved the idea that it was all on me, and that win, lose, draw, it was based on what I was doing. And of course you have your trainer, but skating was kind of like the same thing. You're just out there and you're performing, and I always enjoyed performing, especially when I was skating. And coming off of boxing, you would think that I had, having not like a long amateur career, but having boxed and having that skill set, that it would have been easier for me to get boxing roles. Ironically, I got overlooked for a lot of them that I could have easily played, and that was getting a little frustrating. And also at the time, I wanted to do a project as far as boxing went, but I also wanted to do a project that actually did some good in the world, because I felt like if I'm going to make like a short film, it's just like a warm up for my production team and myself to all just work together. That's usually what a short film is. A short film is just kind of an exercise. It's like it's like the minors versus like the majors in baseball. Like you got to practice. So and a short film is a really great way to do that, and you find out who you like to work with. You can learn from mistakes, and there's not these huge stakes involved. And we really wanted to do like a project that carried some weight. And I was like, how can I involve, lupus like in this? So how can I have something where I'm a boxer, but also involve lupus? And we're kind of like tossing ideas around, trying to figure out how we can involve the two. And my co-producer, Antoine Allen, was like, well, he's like, why don't you just have the boxer get lupus? And I was like, oh, wow. And that kind of, I let it marinate for like a day or two, and we kind of just like thought about it, and we were like, well, yeah, most cases are female, like are for women. So if we're doing a story about a boxer and he's a man, then we're actually doing a story about the minority of a minority. And we just felt like that was like the right way to go. And also I knew at that point, if I was the one playing the character who gets lupus, I would be able to easily draw from my mother's journey. And I felt like it would be a character that I would be able to easily handle. So when I was writing the first draft, I tapped my mom as a resource. The first draft is very different than what you end up seeing on screen. But in the original draft that I wrote, Dusty actually hides the fact that he's sick, versus publicly coming out and admitting that he's sick in the version that you see now. So the journey was similar in the sense that like he's feeling these symptoms or whatever, but he didn't want anyone to know, and he continues to try to fight, etc. Versus like the story that we ended up with, which was him publicly announcing that he has lupus and that he's being forced to retire. And it was more about him not being able to fight anymore versus still trying to fight. And I called my mom a few times and I was like, hey mom, do you ever experience this? And do you ever experience this? And the scene with the doctor where my character gets diagnosed was, I drew from my mom almost completely. It's not the same conversation verbatim that she had with her doctor. It took her a really long time to get diagnosed, but there were a lot of elements that, especially like the emotional punch, that I drew from my mom as well. So it was like a few drafts of the script. We didn't go through like multiple incarnations. It was like kind of like when we shifted gears from like the hiding to going public, there had to be some changeover in that. But once we had a screenplay that we were happy with, we went into Kickstarter mode and fundraised on Kickstarter and crowdfunded the movie. And we went into principal production, and it was a 5-day shoot. We ended up having an issue with a location on our third day, so we shot for 4 days and ended up taking that middle day and scheduling it out for later. And productions always have issues. It's just the way things go. But it actually helped us, in the sense that my mom wanted to donate to the movie, and what she decided to do was our craft services. So my mother and father cooked for the cast and crew for that initial week, those 5 days that we had scheduled. So it gave my mom a middle day off, which she definitely needed because she's a perfectionist. And if one plate goes off and it's not perfect, it's going to be an issue. So at the time, it was actually appreciated. And it was really, it was a family affair because that's what my mom really wanted to do for it. And she was adamant about it. So in the credits of the movie, you'll see Ma's Kitchen as credit for crafty and catering.
I love that. I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah.
And you're right. You need that middle day off, especially if it's a full week. You need a day to sleep if you have lupus, maybe even more than a day, but I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah.
I love that. I think one of the most important things that stood out to me was for most people that I talk to, myself included, we usually have something that falls, I don't want to say falls to the wayside, but there's something that typically has to go when you get a diagnosis, whether it's the career that you were in, or a hobby that you love doing, an exercise, a friendship, a relationship. Like lupus, I often describe it as water. Like it will seep into every space that it possibly can.
Yeah.
And the things that are strongest, that's what survives. So I like that you incorporated that into, because I think it's really relatable to both men and women that have lupus, really of any age, because things get affected. I mean, there's no way around that. I'm curious, what was it like to watch your mom watch the movie for the first time?
It was emotional. She cried.
And she's a tough cookie, your mom.
Yeah, she had not seen someone portrayed with lupus before.
Hmm.
And she just thanked me. She actually even has a cameo in the movie, because we do have a post-credit sequence. A lot of people don't stay through the credits. You got to watch the credits because my mom pops up at the very end. I'm not going to give away the ending. Got to watch it, but my mom does have a little cameo at the end of the film. So, not that that's what made her cry, but I've in a way that was my way of immortalizing my mother forever, because that movie will be with us for until time doesn't exist. So she was very, very grateful, and it was an emotional moment. And that was the first incarnation of the movie that we had, which was for the festival run, which is shorter than the current version that has been released on Amazon. It was festivals have a pretty tight like time limit as far as like short films go. So if you go beyond like the 20-minute mark, actually really 15-minute mark, you kind of alienate yourself from a lot of festivals, because they like to keep their short films within a certain time frame.
Okay.
Our original incarnation of the movie was about 20 minutes. That was with credits. And when I went back and started working with like the Lupus Foundation, and they wanted to promote the movie, that's when I decided to actually do a longer quote unquote producer's cut. I didn't direct the film, Brian Kazmark did, but by that time he had already moved on to other things, and it was still my baby. So I went back and I shot an additional day of footage, and ended up totally adding about 4 minutes or so onto the runtime. Uh, and it was just kind of to kind of let some scenes hit a little bit differently, and we were able to cut in a lot of new footage because I was able to really start from scratch. New sound design, new score, new color, a couple of like new like clips, new scenes, and it was cool to see me not be able to like just rely on that previous festival version that I had, but actually revisit and make a version that I felt was more true to the Lupus journey, and
Mm.
what would resonate more, and make it more relevant to audiences, especially those people who are dealing with lupus.
Yeah, I think I did see the longer version when you showed it to me a while ago. How did it, so what was the reaction, and like how did it do in the festivals, and how do people react when they watch it, or what type of messages do you get from people that have lupus or their family members or friends?
Well, the reaction, we did very well in the festival circuit. Our initial round of submissions, I let one of my producers handle, and I understood the choices that were made, and why we were submitted to said film festivals. But that initial round of submissions, we didn't do really well. I think we got into like two, and I remember thinking like our movie is better than like this two out of whatever it was at the time. I think 2 out of 12. So I went back to the drawing board and I did a lot of research, and I looked up festivals, and I came up with a strategy for festival submissions. And when all was said and done, we actually got into half of the festivals that we submitted to, and half of the festivals that we submitted to actually gave us some form of award. So I think we
Wow.
finished up with about 15 different awards, and for various aspects of production. We've won awards for editing to cinematography. Um, I've won a Best Actor. Quincy Chad, who played Quinn Durbin, won a Best Supporting Actor. It was really, really great, and a lot of nominations. I think we got a lot of nominations for awards, and again for various aspects of the production, which was really nice to see. It wasn't just like, oh, we hit this note, and the festivals realized that this is the one note that we did. It was our recognition kind of came from all over the map when it came to filmmaking. So that was um, a great way to see the film kind of unfold within like the festival community, and it was really well received. I think people really liked it. It is a festival movie, but it still has that kind of mainstream kind of a feel. I think the story arc and whatnot, it doesn't get really abstract or anything like that. I think it can relate to a lot of people, and sports dramas are really popular today, and I think just as popular as they were today as they were like 30 years ago. I think sports dramas have like stood the test of time,
Right.
and still have an audience. So I think the festival audience really liked it. As far as the full release, once we released to the public, and I released that new longer version, I've gotten some incredible feedback. People that said it helped start conversation with their spouses, people that were just grateful to see something that mirrored their journeys. It's been a really, really great response, and I think what people have to realize is like, I in a 25-minute film, you can't tell every aspect about lupus. It was a conscious decision for us not to delve into a lot of the physical symptoms. Yes, of course, we not acknowledge it, the butterfly rash, the pain in the joints. Like there's moments like where I try to include these types of nuances, especially in my performance. But it was really about the idea that he was no longer allowed to do what he thought he was destined to do with his life. And
Right.
that's a really hard thing to deal with for, I think, everyone across the board. So that was kind of like the universal element that I wanted to appeal to those that are suffering from lupus, is the fact that, again, like you said, there's going to be some aspect of your life that you're going to have to dial back on or no longer do, or you're going to have to sacrifice. And in his case, it was his career. And it's been really, really, like, I guess I should say fulfilling, but I'm just honored that the film has served its purpose, as far as, especially to be a conversation starter, for those who are suffering, and be able to show the movie to like a loved one, so that they can be like, oh, wow. It becomes kind of like that light bulb moment that I experienced when I was in college and I read about lupus, the science behind what was happening with lupus. It creates like this light bulb moment. And even though it was someone I was really close to in my life, sometimes you need that wake up call. And for the film to be able to serve that purpose for some people is just, I can't imagine a better way for the film to be used.
I agree. And you're right. I think even living in the same house, like sometimes people don't understand, or they're not really sure how to bring it up or what to say. So I love the fact that it is a conversation starter. For the viewers that are here right now, can you just let them know where they can find it? What are their different options so that they can watch it?
Yeah, sure. So we are available on Amazon Prime Video to rent and to purchase, and we're also available on Vimeo on demand. You can just actually, if you want to watch the trailer, download the film, whatever, you can go to www.standing8themovie.com, completely spelled out, 8 spelled out, all spelled out, standing8themovie.com. I kind of created that as our universal hub. It also has a little bit of information about lupus and getting involved, like the Lupus Foundation, et cetera. So it has it's kind of like a one-stop shop for Standing 8.
Awesome. So for those of us not in the boxing world, what does standing 8 stand for?
Standing 8 is when you basically get rocked and you're not knocked out, but you're still on your feet, and you get an 8 count to see if you can continue. So that's kind of what happens to Dusty Abrams in the film, the lead character. He gets knocked out on his feet, and it's like, will he be able to continue? And it's definitely a metaphor for, coming to a point, like, are you going to continue to live your life? Are you going to fight, or are you going to cave? And I think that the Quinn Durbin character in the movie is he's kind of like all the people around you that are telling you that you don't look sick, or the people that are doubting you, and the people that put you down for dealing with the illness that you're dealing with. I think he kind of is representative of that section of society. And Dusty's significant other in the movie, Skylar, is she's his support system, but she's also represents the support system that the lupus community has, like yourself, right? The Lupus Foundation, the different organizations that exist out there to support those who are battling with lupus. So it's just really a metaphor. And again, it literally just started. I just wanted to say thank you to my mom for always being there for me, and it kind of grew into this whole other thing.
Well, it is amazing. For all of you that have not watched it, definitely go check out Standing 8, the movie. 8 is spelled out once again. So quickly before we sign off, let everyone know what you're doing today, like as far as advocacy, and where they can follow you, and what do you have in the works for right now, and all that good stuff.
Sure. My current step in advocacy, I've been working with the Lupus Foundation a bit. Like I'll be doing the summit, meeting with lawmakers again in a couple of weeks, which I think is really important because awareness is one thing, but you need money for research, right? So that's kind of my thought process. The more awareness, the more dollars for research, we find a cure. And that's what the end all goal is, to bury this disease, to end it, not to live with it, to end it. And I think that it can happen. Modern medicine, if you have a satellite that can see a fly on a horse in the middle of Oklahoma, I think we can figure out how to cure lupus. I mean, that's how I think. So I am planning, I'm working on rewriting a feature-length film with lupus as a plot device. I think I'll be able to partner up with like the right organizations. We're just it has to be the right studio and group of people that I work with, because I need the story told the way it needs to be told. I want to avoid outside perspective, as far as in Hollywood, these things happen where, if someone brings to the table money, they want to come in and they want to change story elements. And for me, it's really important that the story is told the way it is, because I've gotten feedback from people with lupus, and me having dealt with a lupus warrior for my entire life, and all the people that I've worked with through Standing 8 and through advocacy. I really want to tell a story that does them justice. So that's what's happening next. And as far as following, my advocacy and my acting career, I Instagram is definitely my social media of choice. It's just at Kazy Tauginas, just at KAZYTAUGINAS. We also have a Standing 8 Instagram page, which is just Standing 8 Film, and then I'm on Facebook. I've got a fan page. You just look it up, Kazy Tauginas official, Kazy Tauginas. Right? Official Kazy Tauginas or Kazy Tauginas official. I don't know. You'll find me. I'm in there.
You're sort of all over. You're on Netflix. You're on, was it CBS after the Super Bowl?
Yeah. I've been blessed enough to call myself a working actor, and I hope that trend continues, because I really feel that as an entertainer, the wider my platform gets, the more positivity I can rain out into the world. And my platform is lupus awareness. That's how it started, and that's what it's going to stay. So I'm not going anywhere. There's not going to be some magical switching or disappearing act. I will always fight for my lupus warriors, because you all have a place in my heart, and I will do that till the day I die. It's just, I'm here, not going anywhere.
Thank you. Well, a huge thank you from me and from everyone for being a voice for us and making sure that when things are put out in the entertainment industry, that it's a realistic point of view and it does it justice, for a disease that so many people still do not know anything about. So I want to thank you for that. Definitely go and follow Kazy, check out Standing 8, the movie. And yeah, just you can go check them out. And my name is Dolomite, right?
Dolomite is my name. I play a
Dolomite
record exec. Nobody ever recognizes me because they put me in this crazy wig.
It was great.
Yeah, Equalizer the TV show, Equalizer 2 the movie. I've got a movie called Invisible Love that's playing in festivals now, and then there's a horror film with my name on it coming out probably later this year. I can't really talk about it. I don't think the producers want me to make any announcements quite yet, but there's things are coming. Things are coming.
Exciting. Very exciting. I'm happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for watching this episode of Tilly. Come back next week for our next episode where you'll learn more about lupus. And I just want to thank the Lupus Foundation of New England for producing this series. You can learn more about them on Facebook and also on Instagram. So take care, everybody, and have a great night.